Okay, so here we go. So this is just a photograph of Pepper. So with this one, I'm just going to okay, select it all. I'm going to cut this one. Sorry, just moving the menu out of the way. I'm going to channels. I've actually messed around with it before, so I'll get rid of these. So I come into the channels, I make a new channel, and I paste it. And it's the same story. It's Command L. I'm going to make it pure black and white. So I'm just using the channel as a mask. Going OK. In this case, I'm going to get the dodge tool because I can see it's got all these kind of grey flecks through the background. It's on 38%. It's on highlights. So I can come in now and I can wipe around the image a bit. I can get a white paintbrush and I can just get rid of the bits that I don't want and tidy it up until I've got something that I kind of like. So this is the simplest process. Command I, I'll select it, come back into the layers, click on the layer. I'll fill it with black. So foreground color is black, option, delete, and then Command D to deselect it. So if I just put a solid color behind this.
But you could also use,
Okay, and this is creating a texture. So this is the simplest process for doing this. I can play around with it a bit further. So I can do things like if I command and click on this layer, I'll see that it's given me that selection. So now if I make a new layer, I can hit the mask and I can come into this layer and I can fill it. And so that's what I'm getting. I've now got this color and it's controlled by the mask. So either this with the deleted background from the channel or this with a mask. But as long as whatever you're doing, you're going through the channels and bringing it back into the mask. So this is a really, really simple one. This process of gaining a texture or a mark, you can push it as far as you want, as long as you document it. So for example, if I take this and I'm just going to change the foreground color to white. And in this case, like if I go in and have a look, you know, it's got very much a kind of Photoshop quality. As I blow it up, it starts to pixelate. I can see the soft grays and everything in it. So I'm going to change that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up to the little menu in the layers, excuse me. I'm going to flatten it, discard everything, and I'm going to go File, Save As. I'll call this Pepper. And I'm going to save it as a TIFF. I don't need the alpha channels or anything. Doesn't really matter if they're on or off. Save it as a TIFF. I hit replace because there's obviously already something called that. It's in there. Now I use it as a TIFF just because I know it seems a little more stable and it doesn't really have the transparency in it. If I come back, if I now jump into Illustrator, so you'll see that I've got Illustrator on and I might just need to swap. So I've swapped it over. So I'm now sharing sharing Illustrator. If I place, and if you guys can't see Illustrator, what I'm doing, just yell out. Photo collage. I've got Pepper.
1 moment.
I'm going to drag this in here, and now I can go back to something that we're familiar with. So if I come in here now to image track, I'm just going to enlarge this up, Command plus to enlarge it up. I'm going to do a preview. And I'm going to say, okay, the corners, I want it to be less. So what this means is it's going to be less angular. The paths, I'll leave that at the moment. I'll go ignore whites. And the threshold, I can either darken this image up, or I can lighten it off. You can see it coming through here. So I'm going to go with lighten. I've got all that. Object, expand, Command 0 to fit it in the window. And I can select all, grab everything, copy it. And now I'm going to jump back into Photoshop. I transfer Photoshop, and it's just so I can paste in that smart object again. So I'll go OK. And I'm going to scale this. Going to scale it massively, hit return. Command 0, and you can see the quality that we're getting with these shapes. It's through that process of going through Illustrator, and this is where I was saying if you change the image trace in Illustrator, these could be a lot more geometric. I just put them on low so that it would get this more kind of organic quality. Now I can't put this in the channels until I rasterize it, and I'll explain why it's good to put it through the channels, because I could still color this as a smart object, but I want to use the channels. So I go layer, rasterize smart object, select all, and I'll cut it, put it into the channels. That was the one I did before. So new channel, option delete, which fills with the foreground color, which is white. I want to start with white. Command V, and then Command D to deselect it. Command I for the invert, and then I can load this selection up. Once I've loaded it, I go to layers, and I'm going to click on a layer, and this time, while I've got that selection, I'm going to hit mask. Here we go, just needed to redraw. Now I can go to the layer, let's get rid of that, go to the layer, and I can fill that whole layer with pink. I can fill the layer with a gradient. All right, it's thinking about that one. All right, and it hasn't shown the gradient here. It's just, it's going a bit slow, my machine at the moment. Option delete, so I'll take it back to this, but what you'll see when I come in and have a look at this, you see there's a bit of transparency. You can see the image underneath. This is just because there's still a bit of white in the channels. It's not pure black and white. So if I go Command L, and you'll see when I move the slider, it disappears. Okay, so it's just cleaning it up and making it pure black and white. I'm just going to command delete, fill with the background color. Yeah, just move in a solid color just to have a look at it. So essentially, starting with this, a bit of ground up pepper. We had the other one before, we just had it as a channel. But we've taken it through and done a whole auto trace and ended up with this kind of pattern. And this can be used to knock out of another image or all sorts of things. So let's have a look at another one. So I've got this kind of syrup that I've tipped as well. So I'm going to go this. Image, rotation, counterclockwise. Something's bloody marvelous that I can hear in the background anyway. So this one here, what are the ways that we can start to select it?
And the teachers that are teaching in a less linear way, more, you know, it's a little bit more messy.
Okay.
Having a better experience.
Okay. Yeah, you guys, can someone send me a quick text or just on the chat? Oopsie. So that I know you can, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. So I know that you can hear me. Okay, cool. All I did is I could hear a bit of noise coming through the microphone. So I've just muted all of you for a second. So I'll go through this process and then I'll unmute, but it was getting a wee bit noisy. So share screen, back to Photoshop. And so with this process here, now we've got the syrup. And so there's different ways that we can start to mask this. I'm going to unlock it. I'm just going to duplicate it while we have a bit of a play. Switch the eye off beside that one. And the first thing I'm going to try is the way that we've just done it. So I'll select all. I'll copy it. I won't cut it. I'll go to my channels. I'll make a new channel. Command V. And Command D to deselect. Command L for the levels. And I'll go through the same sort of process. Lightening and darkening to try and get contrast for a mask. Got that. I'm now going to go back and get the dodge tool. I'm going to bump that up and make it a wee bit stronger this time. I can make that brush a bit smaller. No, I've gone probably a bit far over this edge, but we'll see how it comes out. We'll see what happens. I can also, whoops, I'll get this a little bit out. So smaller brush. I can also change it from dodge to burn, and I've got it on shadows, big brush, and I can darken some of the stuff on a really big brush. So quickly down here, but making it really solid black back here. White for the paintbrush. So I can just get rid of some of these little bits around the edge. I don't know if I want that bit there, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. So now I've got some sort of mask. So let's see how it looks. Command I. I'll select it. I'll go back to the layers. Click on the layer and I'll hit the mask tool. This just looks a bit weird because it hasn't redrawn, but that's okay. I'm going to grab a solid color just so I can see what it looks like behind it. See what we're ending up with. Maybe it will look better if it's a darker color. Okay, so it's a bit, so if I go Command I on the mask, I quite like the look of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load that mask. You can see it selected the outside. So I'm going to go make a new layer. And let's think about this. So I'm going to try Command Shift I, add the mask, and I'll give this a color on the layer, Option Delete, so it's going to fill it with pink. So it's kind of giving me, I suppose, something that I want. Let's see if we combine these layers together, and I use this, and I go through some of these functions. All right, I quite like that. Now this is where it can start getting tricky. You can say, okay, well, I kind of like that texture, but let's see how far we can push it. So now with all of this, I can go Image, Duplicate, and I'm going to, what have we got? We've got there. I'm just gonna flatten it all. Flatten the image. And now I'm going to see if I can make a selection around the outside of this. Shift with this kind of paintbrush selection tool. And now I'm going to go Command Delete so that I end up with white around the edge of it. I'm going to select all of that. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to go to the channels. I'll make a new channel. I'll start with white. Command V. Command L after I've deselected it. So there, if I push the whites right up, that gives quite a nice texture, but I'm going to pull it back and have it slightly transparent. I'm also going to get a lasso tool and make the feather 55, hit enter, and gonna draw around this piece here. Now, Command H just hides that selection. The selection's still there, it's just hidden. So now I'm going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Wasn't so keen on that pixelization, and I'm going to leave it like that. So the feather will give it a bit of a blend. I could have done it larger than that, but we'll leave it as it is. Sorry, I hit Command I. I still had that selection there, Command H and I can see it. So Command D, nothing selected. Command I, I'll select it. I'll go to the layers. I'll make a new layer and I'll just go Option Delete. Oh, sorry. I'm going to make it a mask. And then I'll go Option Delete, that fills that whole layer. This, I'll give it some sort of some sort of solid color to contrast. So I'll give it a dark blue. And maybe instead of pink, I'm going to go Command Delete. So fill it with white. Screen. All right, so we're getting something there. It's probably going to look better if I can chuck it over the top of something else. So I'm just going to get rid of all these other colors. All right, and now let's see if some of these other things. Dissolve can look really interesting. Usually it's the screen ones that work in the case like this. Oh, that's nice. Difference. And then again, you can play with the opacity of it. Where this is going to start to look a lot better is if I chuck it over an image that's not the same. Okay, and this is probably one where instead of difference, it can go back to screen, color dodge or something like that. Actually, maybe subtract. Bring the opacity down or bump it right up and take it back to screen. This as well. If we double click, we're going to end up with all those layer options, and we can play with the bottom one where it's darkest. Let it show through. So the dark areas are showing through that thing. Option to split it. Let's try the lightest areas. Probably doesn't make much sense because it's because we're using white. There we go. So you can get little fine adjustments here where it's starting to let it through, and you can still play around with the opacity. Okay, so the reason the reason this sort of thing is important, I'll just see if I've got I think I called it online shoots. There was an image here that I used of Clear. I must have Yeah, I must have lost it. And what I did, I think, was I made a new layer, and I'd use one of my custom brushes. And come down the edge here. I'd Command Shift Delete, made it white. And I think I'd come in and filter, blur, Gaussian blur, giving it a slight bit of softening. And then I doubled up a couple of these functions. So this will be a pretty crude result. Was it overlay? Maybe it's that one. I have to try and find the actual image. It's sort of starting to do a little bit. Maybe overlay is not the best one. It'll start to change. You can see it a little bit on the t-shirt now with darken and linear burn, taking the percentages down a wee bit, and maybe I'll just duplicate that. Check it up, option, clip those together, and this one, if I change it back to normal, maybe I'll move it off and give it a Gaussian blur again. Screen. Yeah, I did a better version before, but essentially using textures in that you can get that like old 35mm film where the sun comes in and starts to attack it. But I'll find the other image because it's a much better job, and put it up online. So I'll get rid of some of these. So creating some sort of texture, as long as you go through the channels, and this is another one here. There's so much you can do as long as you document it. So if I get this and I copy it, I go to the channels. Looks like there's already some in there. New, paste. The same thing. I can boost up the contrast. And now again, I can use the dodge tool. Start to affect some of these areas, burn that out a bit, or sorry, dodge it out a bit. Go to burn. Get the paintbrush tool, whoops, just change it off that custom one. And I'm going to paint this out. So not too much longer, I've just about finished with all this, and then we can have a bit of a chat. So with this, Command I, load it, go to the layers. I'm going to make a new layer. I can hit the mask, give this a color, Option Delete, and you can start to get some interesting results. If I put this on, I thought it was darken. Maybe it has to be the other way around. So I'll go Command I. Oh yeah, this is the one. So now with this kind of functionality, you can get some nice things where the type is coloring, but you still get the kind of orange of the book. And then what I can do is I can duplicate all of this, flip the mask around the other way, change the color, Option to Delete, which fills with the foreground color. And now again, play with some of these results. And what I'm going to do with actually I'll do it with this one here. So I'll switch all of this off for a second. I'm going to Command, click on that. I'm going to make Option Delete, so it's black. With this, can't really be transparent. So if I make another layer underneath it and make that white, click on the top layer and go Command E, that will just join it with the layer that's directly underneath. Command A, I'm going to select all. We're going to cut it. Come into my channels, make a new channel, paste it. And then I know I haven't really used the filters, but a nice one here, filter, and I can go, oh, it's a filter gallery or something now. Halftone screen, and it won't do it when the image is transparent. I'll just reduce it down a little bit. The size of the dots can be enlarged. And I'll go okay with that. I can load it up. Go to the layers. And again, can make a mask and give that color to the layer, and let's see what we've got. So you can get some pretty interesting things going on where you end up with just a texture using the photograph on top of itself. A nice one here will then be to go through some of these functions, and something like this, really, really simple, but as you blow up on it, what you're getting now is this beautiful texture that comes through on the dot. So even if I did it with a, let's, oh, okay, I've got that color there, so I'll go Option Delete. So let's have a look at the difference, especially around this area here. Here's our photograph. Beautiful texture coming through. With this, you just have that smooth blend of the Photoshop. But as soon as you put the halftone screen on it and you add darken or multiply or something like that, you can end up with a beautiful, beautiful result. Something like this would be great in its own right as a book cover or something like that. Okay, so look, that's enough playing around with that. I'm going to stop the share for a second, and unmute all so you can talk again if you want to. I'm just going to scribble down a few names. I'll talk about the brief in a second, but essentially it's just whatever you do. Like I said before, tomato sauce, pour it on a bit of paper, take a photograph of it, and then go through this process of putting it through the channels. So essentially, that's the most important factor, is that it goes through the channels. Make sure you're using the channels. If I see a layer and it's deleted around whatever the image is, if it hasn't got that image in the channels, it's not the way I want it. It's very important that you go through that process of pasting into the channels and then loading it back up. So does that make sense to everyone, that sort of thing? That was pushing it a wee bit. I suppose, you know, the very, very first one I did where it was the pepper and we just took it into the channels and loaded it up is fulfilling the exercise. This is what I'm trying to show you at kind of level 6, is that you can actually go a long way with it. And especially, you know, thinking of the auto trace stuff in Illustrator that we did in the very first classes. Now remember that you can always kind of jump back and forth between the programs, because the different programs are going to give essentially the same thing we keep going on about, a different quality of mark that you can then add into Photoshop in any way that you want, as a texture or anything else. Okay, so hey, look, let's talk about a few practical things. So has anyone, either via chat or speaking up, has anyone got any questions about that exercise? No? Okay. So look, this is the, you might want to write this down. This is essentially the write-up for the hand-in. Okay, so the hand-in is going to be next week, which I think is the, I'll just have to have a look at the date. The 28th is going to be our next class. The 28th is essentially, that's going to be the start of the next assignment. So what will happen next week is that I'll just give you an introduction to the assignment. So I'll talk about the brief as such, and then for the rest of that day, I can help you if you need help on the assignment or getting it in order. And what we'll say is that the hand-in time, we'll make it, it's handed in on that day. We'll just see how everyone's doing on the day, but I'll give you a folder to put it into, and we'll check that that's all working. And if people need a bit more time, we'll just make it later in the evening. But you've got at the very least until 5 o'clock. But the way it'll start off is we'll talk about the next brief, and then we'll just have time to hand in. Okay, so what you need is two. So this is essentially for the portfolio. We'll forget about the workbook for the time being. So for the portfolio, 2 auto traces. Okay, so just pick 2 of your best auto traces and have them on an A4. So all of this is done to an A4 sheet. Now, 2 auto traces. From what I've seen, you guys have done a fantastic job with the auto traces, so that'll be fine. That stuff's worked out really, really well. The drawing stuff kind of got. We didn't probably develop that as much as we could have. We kind of jumped into the next bit. So I just want one drawing. I realized that some of that stuff is probably sitting in drawers at Te Auaha.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately.
yeah. So I mean, I just have to give leeway on that one, and just say, do another wandering line or a blind drawing, blind drawing or something like that, and pop that in. There's not much we can do about that stuff being at Te Auaha. So we'll just make that one kind of drawing. If it can just be a basic line drawing is fine. Now the photo collages. So two photo collages. Keep them simple. And what I mean by that is, don't try and do it like wallpaper right across the whole thing. Think about the kind of the design basics that I'm sure you've gone through. Composition, so we're talking about contrast, negative space, scale, some of those absolute basics. So two photo collages. One double exposure. Okay, from the stuff that's going up, that seems that stuff all looks great. So that's nice and easy. And one, I'm going to call it textural image. So that's today. Okay. So with that, the way I want it set up on an A4 is just the original photo. So set up the original photo, and then underneath it, that textual mark. However you've manipulated it in Photoshop. It can just be, it doesn't have to be really fancy unless, it depends what kind of technique you're using, but it can just be black on white. It's essentially putting something together, getting it into Photoshop and manipulating it through channels until you've got a mark. So, so it doesn't have to be overly complex. So that's our portfolio. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 images for the portfolio. So just be honest. Is there anything in there that that you've got issues with, or is it pushing anyone too much for time? I'm happy that. What's that? Oh no, go on. Is it doable, or do we want to make the photo collage just one? Any takers? All right, okay. We'll leave it as it is. So 2 auto traces, 1 drawing, 2 photo collages, 1 double exposure, and 1 textural image. Obviously, all of this has to be handed in as a PDF. So I would say just make A4 pages and Illustrator or InDesign, paste the stuff in, and save it as a PDF. Okay. Now, so so the workbook, and this is a hassle because it comes down to the same thing. And just look, just so you know, at the moment, because it's 1 more week, and then we go into 2 weeks of level 3, and then we see what happens after that. We're already going to be essentially at the very least, we're going to be into 2 or 3 weeks into the second half of the assignment. So no one knows for sure, but the likelihood is that this trimester is probably going to be online, and then ideally the next trimester, the second trimester, is going to be when we're back in the studio. That's what it looks like, but like I say, it's will at least be 3 weeks into the assignments. I'll try and work things out so that all works well. Now the workbook is going to be the same thing. Some of you might have done pages and pages in a workbook, but it's going to have to be a selection as a PDF for the hand-in. There's not much we can do about that. So essentially what I'm going to be after is 2 pages of each. So again, if we're looking at an A4 pages, 2 pages that are dealing with the auto trace. One of those pages can be as simple as, I don't know if you've seen have you guys seen the tutorial about recoloring on Illustrator?
Yeah.
Has anyone not? Chat no if you haven't seen it. Okay, cool. So it looks like, so that's a really, really easy process to get you a whole page for the auto trace. So 2 pages of auto trace, 2 pages of drawings. Okay, again, it's just A4. So this could just be a few drawings, 2 pages of photo collages, 2 pages for the double exposure, and 2 pages for the printmaking transfer, or the texture that we've just done. Now, of course, it's not just a visual workbook, so have some kind of discussion on there. If you don't want to go and do a whole lot of 2 pages of blind drawings, then look up blind contour drawing, look up examples, put it in, and what I'm after is your analyzation. Never, other than the last one, which is kind of the texture, and I need the process spelt out. All your analyzation should always be about what you could do with something, what you can see going on, or what works and what doesn't, is really, 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 really important. So it's about observation and not the process or the history. So I'm not interested in your workbook for you guys to find blind contour drawing and saying, this is a drawing by Mark who was born in 1972 and he has a cat and works at a university or whatever. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. It's about your commentary. So what I'm looking for is that you can find an image on the web and you can start to pick at it and say, well, this bit works and this is the reason why. This bit goes too far. This picture would look better if it had more negative space added into it. I think the composition is weak. The composition's strong on this one. So using bad images is sometimes as good as using good images, because it's your analyzation that I'm after. And sometimes you can do a better job of analyzing something that's bad rather than something that's good. Okay, so that's essentially it. So look, any questions or comments or anything about that? Okay, hopefully that's not too too full on for you guys. So my next question, I suppose, is for you kind of students that are beaming in from overseas. whereabouts are you guys up to? You're probably going to have to unmute your mic for this. I know that you were doing work with Alice, or Alice was sending stuff through, but are you guys up with sort of this sort of stuff, or are you well behind? Or you can just type if it's easier to type in the chat. Okay. So any questions at all? Do we want to come? Do you need to do some stuff, or come back later and show me some stuff, or do we call it quits, or do you want me to go through another one of those channel exercises? I'm just going to hide that for a second and see if I can find this image of Claire that I did. Sorry, bear with me. I might be able to find this image. Yeah, I can't seem to find this image. Just going to check and see if I put it on Trello. No, I can't see it on Trello either, unfortunately. Yeah, look, in that case, there's plenty of stuff to work on. We'll call it quits here. That's an hour. What I'll do is I'll come back. I'll send out another invite at 1 o'clock, and I'll find that image of Claire. It'll give you an idea, but that's the breakdown, and let's just focus on getting that work sorted out. I'll worry about talking about the next assignment next week. We'll focus on this stuff. So I'll come back at 1. So if you've got any questions or take some screenshots or some photographs to show me of workbooks or anything like that if you want, and I can look at that sort of stuff, even if it's your writing, the comments that you're doing and that sort of thing. We can look at that sort of stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
oh yeah. I just got a chat. The exercises today, I've just done a Zoom thing. So when I finish here, I'll stop recording, and I'll put a link to it on the Trello board. So I'll put it up on. Yeah, I think if it's best to put it up on YouTube or whatever, but I'll put a link on it, and I'll just put it in those first couple of panels, so we will have all that sort of stuff. And the other thing as well is, if you're doing any of these techniques, if it goes wrong, send me the Photoshop file, and just flick me an email or a message or something, and I can work on it, because I'll show you very quickly here. And I know that you guys are a level 6, so it's a bit different, I realize, but I'll just show you. I'll share the Trello board. So this isn't you guys. This is the level 5s and everything. So I've got the Zooms, the online recordings there, and I'll do the same for you guys, the shoots and stuff. But what I've been doing is, yeah, if we come down here, if someone's had a problem, I'm labeling a new panel with my name, so that everybody can go in and have a look at it. So this was one where I stuck in a PDF, and it's corrections to their perspective. So they were doing perspective drawing, and so I've gone through and made comments, drawn on their drawings and everything, and done it that way, so everyone can kind of see what's going on. There's one here about the workbook, and so I've gone back with this and said, okay, that's great, you've done research on one photographer. Now stick up a whole lot of examples of long depth of field, shallow depth of field, the photos you've taken. So all sorts of stuff like that. And where are they? Who had, actually I think it was, right, so this one here. So for Nas, he had problems with Photoshop. So there's a link to OneDrive, and that's given a video of this process, and I've gone through it. So this is just a screen capture, but this was the image that he did. So he sent through, he didn't send through a Photoshop, I just kind of recreated it, and I talked about what would tidy this up, or the text wasn't working. And so there's a little video on how this went. So I'll do, so it'll be the same thing for you guys. If you have something specific, the same with Margaret here trying to do a silhouette, then I can do a quick shoot or a screen capture of a couple of things, and then chuck them up on the board so everyone can kind of get access to it. And that can be a helpful way of working as well. Okay, so don't be afraid if you're struggling to flick things through to me, and I can help in that way. Okay, cool. I'm going to finish it there, chuck this recording up, and I'm going to come back on at 1. So if you guys overseas, so it's basically, it's 11 o'clock now, so I'm going to come back in 2 hours. So if you want to come back and you have some questions and stuff, then we can go from there.